right, thanks for joining us today, everybody. As we mentioned on LinkedIn, this is going to be the third in our session of introductions to the Talent Quest conference in March. So, complimentary session run on DISC Communications by Mr. Tom Borg here. He's the head of Tom Borg Consulting, and since 1996, he's been working with companies to help them improve their communication, leadership, and culture. And he's going to walk us through specifically today how to use DISC to improve on those things. So, Tom, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you if you want to get us started.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Adam. I'm going to walk right over here to our PowerPoint. We'll be referring to that today and a few other things. So good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome everyone to our program today, how to create brilliant teams by leveraging DISC. So as the story goes, Michelangelo, the great Italian sculptor, was out one day. He's wheeling this huge block of marble. And it's going to be his next great creation, I'm sure. And as he was wheeling this along, off in the distance, one of his friends sees him and yells out, hey, Mike, wait up. I want to ask you a question. Well, Michelangelo was in no mood to set this heavy wheelbarrow down, so he just kind of signaled with his head and shouted, hey, Giuseppe, you want to talk to me? You catch up with me. So with that, they just strolled along soon enough. His friend catches up with him and says, hey, Mike, he says, tell me, how do you do it? He says, how do you take that ugly block of marble and make those beautiful sculptures? Well, Michelangelo knew he was going to have to do some explaining. So with that, he brings this wheelbarrow to a stop, sets it down with a thud, takes out a kerchief, wipes his brow, and says, Giuseppe, friend, he said, you got all mixed up. What you just called this ugly block of marble, well, she already has it at a beautiful sculpture inside of her. All Michelangelo going to do is knock off the rough edges, polish it up, and let the real beauty come out. And I guess that's what we're doing here today. Is you've already got what it takes to communicate and work as a team. The tool of DISC is something that can help you do it even better. My goal is to take you to an advanced level of your communication using this tool. Now, we're going to only do a brief segment here today. If you'd like to see more, certainly we're going to be covering this in the full-blown program we'll be doing in March as part of our conference. So a little bit about myself. As Adam mentioned, I am a business consultant, trainer, coach. I am certified in all of the instruments TTI has. So that's something I really am proud of. So let's get started. What does poor communication cost? That's a great place to start because that's what the DISC is all about. It's something to help improve communication within your organization, between your team members, between your leadership team, between the principals of the organization. So new research by Grammarly and the Harris Poll conducted in February 2022 estimates a 1.2 trillion, that's a lot of money, 1.2 trillion annual loss among U.S. businesses due to poor communication, or approximately $12,506 per employee every year. So when someone says they don't have enough time to implement an instrument like this, what they're really saying is they don't have enough time not to implement this instrument. So, okay, so you have a workbook. If you don't have a workbook and you're watching this later, please contact us. We'll send you the workbook so you can follow along with the webinar and just fill in the blanks as you go. So they have a written copy of what we were covering here today. I do believe that when you write down the answers, you are going to more permanently learn the ideas. It's been shown that people, when they're writing things down, they actually have a connection between that pen and their brain when it comes to retaining that information. So that's where we like to encourage you to get involved with that. Okay, so let's move ahead. Understanding your team members. So if you look at number 1 in your workbook there, one of the keys to creating brilliant teams in your organization is based on having the right kind of communication within your organization. So if you think about that for a second, by the way, the word communication, that's what you're going to write in your space there on your worksheet. So when we think about communication, I like to go to our next point here, and that is people need to have certain questions answered if they work for you or they work for each other. Now, this survey. There was a survey that was done by Delta Airlines some years ago, and they wanted to find out what their customers really wanted, uh, the people they were serving. And what it boiled down to were four questions these people wanted the answers to. And when this study was revealed, the results showed that, you know what, this applies to just about any organization, any company. And so that's why I want to bring them up here today. So the first question your team members have for you as a leader, or the leader has for the people that work for him or her, are these. First, do you like me? That's the word like. Put that in your workbook. So what do we mean by like? Well, we show that we like somebody by a lot of different ways. When they walk into the room, do we kind of light up? Do we smile when we see them? Do we acknowledge them? That's a form of liking somebody. Maybe it's just the fact that you take the time to talk to them. You know, sometimes you've seen it, I've seen it, my clients, some owners or principals, they don't get out of their office a whole lot. They don't walk around and talk to the people. They don't even know the names of some of the people that work for them. So first things first, answer that question. Do you like me? And that really comes through your behavior. Second question, so 2B, let's go to the next one here. Do you care about me? Now, how do we show people that we care about them? Well, one way is to simply ask questions. Hey, how you doing? You know, how's the family? What are some of the things you do outside of work? Um, how's your career path going in this organization? Is it something that you feel good about? Do you need some extra time to have someone here in the organization bounce ideas off you of what you could be doing, programs you could be participating in? So this is important. This is a question we need to answer, and we do answer it oftentimes by the things we do for that individual. Third question they've got for us. This is a big one now. Can I trust you? There's the word trust. Jot that word down. So how do we show people that we can be trusted? I would think most people watching this program would say, hey, I mean, I'm trustworthy. You know, I don't cheat on my taxes. Well, let's go a little further than that. Simple ways people prove their trust is, let's say someone emails you. Do you email them back promptly? Do you open their email, right? If I send you an email, you don't open it, that's one form of mistrust because I can't trust you to communicate with me in that respect. Another form of trust is when we do what we say we're going to do. Now, when we don't do that, again, that starts to build some mistrust. You know, if you make promises you don't keep, that can create some problems, create some issues. How about this? People call you on the phone. Do you answer the call? Do you pick up? I know of some CEOs that don't. That's their policy. You know, if you want to talk to me, you're going to have to come by my office. I'm not going to pick up the phone. Well, sometimes it's not convenient to do it that way. So these are some of the things we can do to build or destroy trust when we're dealing with our employees or with other team members. Here's the last question. Do you know what you're doing? Now, that's a pretty powerful question that you need to spend some time thinking about how you can answer. The way we show we know what we're doing is, do you belong to a professional association? Do you read books on improvement? Well, question for all of my clients, I ask them right from the get-go, what is the leadership book you're reading right now? Or what was the last leadership book you read? And when did you read it? You see, this is an indication of whether this person is serious about self-development. So do you know what you're doing? Demonstrate that. Demonstrate that by what you've not done in the past, not that college degree you got 12 years ago, but what are you doing now to prove and continue to work on that? All right, so moving ahead, those are four questions we need to answer if we want to get the basic foundation set for communication. Let's move ahead. Now, with the assessment we love to use, my team, Adam and Ron, we use something called the behaviors assessments by Target Training International. And I'm going to only go over a couple of parts of that assessment here today, and we'll show you an actual sample of one. But the first area that I want to concentrate on that you can pull from the assessment is the value that each team member brings to your organization. So that would be the word value you want to put in under part B, okay? The value they bring to the organization. So let's do this. I'm going to stop share for a second. I'm going to walk over to a sample of an assessment and take a look at that. Let's see here. We're going to walk back up to the top of this assessment here. So we can take a look at that right over here. Okay. So in this particular assessment that we're using here, it's part of the Talent Insights, which is actually 2 assessments in one. But this section here is going to identify the value that person brings to the organization. So in that debrief that we're going to do with that individual, we're going to help them identify the top 3 skills or values they bring to the organization, the value they bring to the organization. Now that's important to get their buy-in. Sometimes they don't agree with everything on the list. That's fine. I just tell them, just choose what you feel is actual. It's something that you can actually identify with. So the top 3 is what they'll highlight. Now from there, to use an assessment properly, you need to have that person sit with their supervisor or the person they report to. And the way we like to do that is typically we do a meeting where there's the supervisor, there's the employee, and then one of ourselves, we're there, and we kind of coordinate that meeting where we go through this assessment together. But what's important there is we need to have that supervisor feedback to that individual. Well, hey, I agree with you. These are things you do bring to the table, that you do bring value to our organization. And by the way, I see a couple other things in this list that I think you also do, or some things that aren't on this list. So to use an assessment in a way we can open up this communication, that's important. And that comes from sitting down, taking the time to go through it with that individual and their the person they report to. So value to the organization, very important. Okay, moving ahead. So what we also want to go to next is the report's going to identify the person's communication preferences. This is vital. That's one of the things I love about this particular report. It actually identifies the way that person prefers other people talk to them. So again, we're going to ask that person, please highlight the top 3 ways you want people to talk to you when they're having a conversation with you, when they're trying to communicate with you. So
Tom,
yes, please.
could you screen share the report with us, please,
I'm
so we can
sorry.
see it as well?
I'm sorry. I thank you, Adam, for sharing that with me. I
Yeah, of
forgot
course.
to hit the reshare button here. So let's do that. Okay. Thank you. Please speak up. That's a good form of communication. I like that. Uh, all
Much better.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So here's what we're looking at here. Just for you, if you didn't see the first one, this is the part of the report that shows value to the organization. So I just list those out. And again, the person can select the top 3, and then we work with that person and their supervisor to go over that same list. Good topic of discussion there. So the next section in this report is the checklist for communicating. So that is ways that person prefers to be communicated to. We have, again, highlight the top 3. Now, the point is we want them to be able to at least identify 3, and that's important. All right, so with that, again, we want that supervisor to understand that, hey, this is the way this person prefers that you communicate with them. This is important that they respect that when they're having that communication process. Next, how about this? Ways they do not want to be communicated to. So for instance, talk in a loud voice or use confrontation. That's what this one sample points out about the one person that they're identifying here. Now, I give you an example. One of my clients, a university, as a matter of fact, in their admissions department, there were a group of people that worked together. And one of them in particular had a great voice. It was like a loud radio voice. I mean, this guy was good. And problem was when he'd walk into the room, he'd start talking. He was so loud that one of the other workers was offended by the way he spoke. It was too loud. It actually wore on her nerves and she had to leave the room. So this is something this other man needed to know about this other woman, and that is he needed to bring his voice down when he was in her presence, and certainly when he was talking to her. So these are things we need to remember, and this is what a report like this can identify, ways that the person does not want to be communicated to. So a very powerful tool, can be very, very helpful in that respect. So with that said, let's move to the next section here. And what we want to talk about here is perceptions. So this is another key report section I want to identify here. So you can see I went past a couple of other things there. That's fine. Again, the report's got lots of good things in it. We're just going to zero in on a couple of them today. about perceptions. This is a key result area for any good report. Any good behaviors report has this section in it. Now, what's important about this is that people typically see themselves in a particular way. What we do with the person we're debriefing is we ask them to identify, in the section here of self-perception, is to identify the way they see themselves. And many times they highlight all 6 of those points. We explain to them, now, that's how you see yourself. However, in situations where you're under some moderate pressure, tension, or stress, you're going to come across a little different. Although you intend on coming across as precise, moderate knowledgeable, thorough, diplomatic, analytical, you may not be coming across that way. As a matter of fact, you might be coming across as pessimistic, worrisome, picky, fussy. Now, this depends on the individual, and the report will identify the areas that the ways that person is going to come across. Every report's different. That's important for that person to know, okay, if I'm going to be under some stress, I better take a deep breath. I better slow down and better think twice about how I'm going to communicate to other people, because I don't want to give the wrong impression. And of course, if they're under extreme pressure, that's even worse, because they could come across as, in this case, the person is perfectionistic, strict, hard to please, defensive. Oh my gosh, that's not good communication. So again, if we can help that person understand how stress is going to skew the way they're communicating to other people, that would be important for them to understand, and at the same time be able to modify as they need to do that. Now, one of the nice things about this report, it will generate a personal development plan. So as the person walks through the report, they can fill in their personal development plan the areas they want to work on. We'll pull things right out of the report, put into that personal development plan. So that's another key result area you want to have with your assessment. This, one of the things I like about this particular assessment, that it does that. Okay, so those are perceptions. Let's see, one more area, and then we'll open it up for some questions here. I want to talk about the business of improvement. So let's walk down to that page, areas for improvement. Let's see here. Okay, right about here. So the report does a great job of identifying areas that the person could put into their personal development plan, but also I like to tell business owners, or the person that is supervising this person, this area, we could pull things out of here and put this into their annual success plan. Now, some people might say, well, what about the annual review? Let's think about that. Those words, annual review, are not the best words to use, not the best thing to have, really, when it comes to helping a person get ahead. So probably a better way to do it is put together what I call a personal success plan for the next year. That's where you list out the goals they want to accomplish, the things they want to work on. And certainly we can go back to this report and pull out areas for improvement that we can put into that personal success plan or annual success plan. So that's something to think about. Now, in this case, we would certainly be asking the person to highlight the top 3 areas they want to work on. In that debriefing, when we sit with their supervisor or the person they report to, we'll have a discussion around those 3 areas. Maybe that's where that supervisor can help that individual get some extra help in working on some of those areas, or maybe give that person an opportunity to take some training, or to take some get some mentoring from people within the organization, you see. So again, areas for improvement. That's what I love about this particular report. It'll help identify areas that that person can work on. And of course, they're the ones that are going to have to want to work on those areas. And that's why we want to walk through this with them and debrief them as we go. So with that said, I'm going to stop sharing right now, and we can open this up to questions and comments as we go. So what are some of the questions we might have, or what are some of the questions you've heard other people ask about these type of assessments you'd like to hear me respond to?
Hey, Tom,
Yes.
I've got a question about, I was following along on the workbook, and then when we got into part B, I kind of lost it. So can you just quickly make sure I've got the right stuff to go in the
Sure.
blanks on
Yes.
part B
Okay.
forward?
Okay, so in part B, the report identifies the value of each team member, what they bring to the organization. And that A would be the team member's perception. That's one thing we're going to work on. That's 1A would be the word team.
Yeah.
1B would be the supervisor's perception. That would be
Oh,
the
okay.
other point you fill. Thanks for asking that, Ron. And let's go to number 2. So the number 2 is just for your own comments there. In terms of the report will identify communication preferences, what your team members want, how they want to be communicated to. So any note you wanted to add to that, you could on your own. It's pretty much just the way it was presented. They just wanted to identify the fact that we're going to talk about ways the person wanted to be communicated to, and then the ways they didn't want to be
Got
communicated
it.
to.
Okay. That's
Mhm.
good.
And perceptions was the same thing. Of course, that is all about how others see us. That would be the word you want to fill in under 3 perceptions, how others see that individual.
So would it be how the individual sees him or herself and then how others see that individual?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. All
2
right.
parts to that: individual, how they see themselves, and how others see that person. And the last one there on areas for improvement. So that would just be some general notes you might want to take down on what you could use that report for in terms of areas for improvement.
Great. Thank you for that.
Thanks for asking.
So does anyone else have a question that came up as Tom was presenting that you want to fire away?
I have a comment as well as a question.
Sure.
So, Tom, one of the things I love about this presentation is this worksheet that I'm pulling out. I love it.
Thank you.
It helps me see that you really value my input if someone else gives me the input, and it's a quick look to see how I like to be communicated to.
Mhm.
And one of the things that came up for me was that this is pretty useless if I don't have an empathetic leader who also looks out for me and want to look at the report. So what have you found to be successful for this product to, how can this product be used even more successfully?
Great question.
After the debrief?
Great question. And Angela, whenever someone says great question, you know what they're doing? They're saying, that gives me some time to think what I'm going to say. And I know the answer. I know the answer. That's why. But that's a great question. And the reason is that that's where you just don't want to have a report given to somebody and they fill it out, they get the report back, and then there's some brief debriefing that's done with them. I like to use these, my colleagues, Ron and Adam, we like to use these as part of a project where we're actually going to have time with that leader, whoever it is this person reports to. That person needs to get some coaching on how to use this assessment with their people. That person needs to get some coaching on how to be a better leader. And typically that's how we like to work, where we're working with that leadership team. And as a result, helping them be better at what they're already doing. And then when this tool comes along, they know how to use it. So we're going to be working with them individually to help them with that'd be the ideal situation. Does that always happen where people purchase assessments and use them? Unfortunately, it doesn't happen in the real world. And in some cases, it does less to really enhance that person's ability to improve because they have a document or they have an instrument that they're not easily able to interpret.
Yeah, so for a leader who truly cares, you got to stick with it.
Yes.
Using a program, because as I was thinking and looking at Amy's data, she only speaks up if it's a non-competitive, environment where her voice, then she will allow herself to be heard. So that takes a process. That takes an empathetic leader, someone who's self-aware, to notice that about the employee. So this is very useful data, but it takes some coaching on the consultant's part, a partnership to make that happen.
Absolutely, Angela, that's a great point. And that's the whole thing, is that this is not something that happens in one day and you're done. It should be an ongoing process. Well, at least a year. We should be working with that leadership team to help them learn how to be better at what they're doing and how they're doing it. And that's how we grow. It's not going to happen in a 24-hour period.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in good hands. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking that question.
So my question, Tom, is your presentation is titled how to create brilliant teams using DISC. And so what is it about the word brilliant that stands out? Like, what are we aiming for there? Because I honestly, my experience in business has been that a lot of teams are kind of dull. And so when you say brilliant, I'm like, wow, suddenly it resets my expectations. But what are you actually going for? Is there anything behind that word that speaks to you especially?
Brian, that's another great question. I just was doing a training program just yesterday morning, as a matter of fact. And at the end of the program, the owner of the company emails me and said, "This is one of the best programs you've done so far. Really love the way you did it." And we were basing a lot of the information that we were using in that program on the work we'd done in the prior year, last year as well as this year. And those assessments were a starting point. So when you want to be brilliant, you want to do something that goes down, gets into the core of the organization, gets into the core of the individuals, and something that's not just going to be on the surface. So I think what we're referring to, if you want to have a brilliant communication, brilliant teams, you need to go deep, and you need to have a tool that can help you do that much more than they've done before in the past. Something that's exceptionally, an exceptional tool is going to get you that brilliant result.
I like it.
That's
Good.
great.
So Adam or Mike, do you guys have a question for Tom? Because we need to wrap things up here. We just plan to go for half an hour, so I'm going to give you guys a chance if you got anything to ask.
I don't have a question, but I was pleasantly surprised by your use of the term success plan. That's something that had never occurred to me, but I think that frames it really nicely as a manager to look at your employees, and you're not evaluating, you're helping them achieve success, which I think that's a really good notion.
Mike, that's a powerful point you're bringing up, because you see, you can't really do anything if you do a performance evaluation. It's been done. Everything that they did is in the past. There's no way you can change that. So let's do this in reverse. Let's start at the beginning of the year and say, hey, here's where we want to work on these areas, and then check in with that person throughout the year several times, and not necessarily formally. It could be just a 5-minute chat by the water cooler, right? But to keep them on track, to make sure that they're getting past any obstacles along the way. But again, that's to echo what you're saying. That, I think, is one of the best ways to do it, where you start out at the beginning of the year with the goals set down, and the person agrees to those goals, and then we just facilitate. So when you get to the end of the year, there's no surprises.
Yep.
They've reached the end zone, so to speak.
Thanks for sharing that, Tom. Yeah, I think the last thing, that I had to add, Ron just got it in the comments there, was that if you are interested in hearing a longer version of this session, and Michael, I know you were here at the last session that we ran too, we are hosting these as full hour sessions. We'll have 6 full hour-long sessions at our web conference in March. They're going to cover communication, leadership, emotional intelligence, employee engagement, sales, a wide variety of business-related topics, really giving people a chance to figure out how they can make assessments work for them in a lot of different contexts within their organization. So feel free to join us then. There is an early bird special running through the end of January. It's a bit cheaper to register, so I encourage you to do so before then. And I think since we're over time, I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining us, and y'all have a wonderful rest of your day.